means through which corporations' objectives are set and pursued in the context of social, regulatory, and market environment. Corporate governance practices can be seen as attempts to align the interest of the shareholders. Corporate governance mainly it is an attempt to align the interest to make the stakeholders interest at one point. Corporate governance is very useful. Then when we see the need of corporate governance, why we require the corporate governance? First one is widespread of shareholders. As the shareholders are widespread in different geographical context or a different cultural background or a different levels they are into. Hence, to make them all together to fall under the one umbrella, corporate governance is very important. Today, a company has a very large number of shareholders spread all over the nation and even the world, and a majority of the shareholders being unorganized and having an indifferent attitude towards the corporate affairs. The idea of shareholder democracy remains confined only to law and articles of association, which require a practical implementation through a code of conduct of corporate governance. So, as the shareholders are widespread in a different areas, hence to bring them all together and to make them follow a particular code of conduct, corporate governance is useful. So, changing ownership structure. The patterns of corporate ownership has changed considerably in the present day times, with institutional investors, foreign as well, and mutual funds becoming the largest shareholders in the large corporate private sector. These investors have become the greatest challenge to corporate managements, forcing the latter to abide by some established code of corporate governance to build up its image in the society. So, to create a image in the society, the organization has to change its ownership, which are flexible towards the investors. Either it may be a institutional investors or the individual investors. For them, the organization must be made so flexible, so adaptable, so that it can reach every part of the society. So, for which corporate governance is required. Then corporate governance is required for corporate scams and scandals. To identify corporate scams and scandals, corporate governance is very helpful. It will help the government, or it will help the organizations to identify the frauds in an easy way. Corporate scams or frauds in the recent years of the past have shaken public confidence in the corporate management. Now, because of some of the companies or some of the people, the public idea on these corporate institutions are very reduced. That means they think that the corporate organizations will always involve into some or the other frauds, or the people who involve into some or the other frauds. So they have lost their trust on these corporate institutions. So they are worried to invest their funds into these organizations. But the need for the corporate governance is then imperative for reviving investors' confidence. So, with the help of corporate governance, it has become little bit easy for the organizations to get back the confidence, or to create the trust among the investors, so that they can join and they can invest in the organization. So, corporate governance helps in easy identification of scams at different levels. So, that created a trust among the public to invest into the organizations. So, corporate governance is important to identify the scams or the frauds, so that the investors' confidence will be improved, investors' trust will be improved. Greater expectations of society in corporate sector. Society of today holds greater expectations of the corporate sector in terms of reasonable prices, better quality, pollution control, better utilization of resources. Now, as the society is as the corporate industries or corporate Organizations are part of the society, hence society expects something from these corporate sector in terms of providing the goods and services at a reasonable prices, or providing the goods and services at better quality, with having a minimum effect on the pollution, or sustainable development, better utilization of resources. So society will have some expectations. To reach these expectations, corporate governance is very important. So there is a need for the code of corporate governance for the best management of company in economic and social terms. Then hostile takeovers. Hostile takeovers of corporations witnessed in several countries put a question mark on the efficiency of management of takeover companies. This factor also points out to the need for corporate governance in the form of an efficient code of conduct for corporate management. Now, hostile takeovers is, um, in some of the countries, the efficiency management will be taken over by the different companies. So hence, to avoid these hostile takeovers, corporate governance is very important. With the help of the efficient code of conduct, which is given in this corporate governance, will help the management in retaining or to avoiding the hostile takeovers. Huge increase in top management compensations. It has been observed in both developing and developed economies that there are there has been a great increase in the monetary payments packages of top level corporate executives. Now, because the corporate organizations have increased a lot, now there is a huge increase in the top management compensation also, that is the monetary payments. Hence, with the help of corporate governance, the packages of the top level corporate executives will have an impact in the developing and developed economies. Then globalization. Globalization is another important aspect because of which the corporate governance is very much needed in the organizations. Desire of more and more Indian companies to get listed on international stock exchanges also focus on a need for the corporate governance. Now, because of the globalization, Indian companies want to list their companies in the global stock market. Hence, that leads to they need to focus more on the corporate governance. So these are some of the reasons, some of the need because of which corporate governance came into existence. Then benefits of corporate governance. A good corporate governance ensures corporate success and economic growth. So here, corporate governance will definitely ensures that the organizations will have a success and growth will be there in the organizations. Strong corporate governance maintains investors' confidence, as we have discussed earlier, that investors' confidence trust will be rebuilt with the help of this corporate governance. As a result of which, company can raise capital efficiently and effectively. It lowers the capital cost. The capital cost will be reduced with the help of the corporate governance. There is a positive impact on share price. The share price will have a positive impact on it, which will leads a positive impact on the organizations. It provides proper inducement to the owners as well as managers to achieve objectives that are in interest of shareholders and the organizations. So they produce this corporate governance provides proper inducements to the owners as well as managers. Inducements in the sense it provides a proper suggestions kind of a thing, or strategies kind of a things to the owners as well as to the managers to achieve the objectives. Good corporate governance also minimizes wastages, corruption, risk, and mismanagement. Wastages, when the because one of the factor of corporate governance is providing welfare activities to the society or minimizing the wastage in the society. It also helps in eradicating the frauds, corruptions. It reduces the risk and the mismanagement activities with the help of the corporate governance. It helps in brand formation and development. It ensures organization in managed in a manner that first the best interest of all. So overall, the corporate governance concentrates on how well the organization is managed, which will provide the best results to each and every person who is associated with the organization. So that is about the corporate governance. And the small topic we have is demographic environment that comes in your social and after your social and cultural environment we have a demographic environment. Now demographic environment refers to the study of human population in terms of size, density, location, age, gender, race and occupation, which directly impacts the market demand and business strategy. Now organizations has to take some sort of decisions with related to demand or with related to supply, with related to product pricing, with related to quality, anything that they have to decide based on this demographic environment, demographic characteristics. Now demographic is all about the human population of that particular area, where it includes everything which is related to the human related activities. Either it may be the size, that is the population of that particular area, and the density, how many people of different age groups they are, location where they are residing, their gender, whether male or female, their race, that is the community which they belongs to, and the occupation what they are doing. Based on that, the market demand will be created. Accordingly, business can take some decision strategies to capture the market demand. Now, when we see the characteristics or the components of demographic environment, it includes population size and growth. The total number of people in that particular region, that is your population size. Along with that, population growth rate, population is expanding or declining. Like in India, we say youth population is increasing because we have more number of youth population in India when compared with the China, because in China we have the declining population growth rate is declining over there because of the old age people are of more number. So that is population size and growth rates. Then age distribution, segmentation of population, children, teenager, retired, affects demand for specific products and services. Gender distribution, whether male or female, who are influencing more in the market, whether female have a more influence or the male have the more influence. Accordingly, the product demand or strategies can be made. Then family structure or structures, changes in household size. Household size means it may be two-member family, four member family, eight-member family, like that. The number of family members of that particular family household, or the marriage rate. If the marriage rate increases, obviously the population also increases. If the marriage rate decreases, the population decreases. So hence marriage rates also will have an impact on the creation of the demand for a certain products. And family life cycle stages impact consumer buying behavior. Income levels and distribution. The purchasing power of the consumers, often analyzed by looking at the growing middle class, disposable income, and income disparities. Education levels and occupation. Literacy rates, educational attainment, and occupational trends. Whether it is a white collar jobs or a blue collar jobs, like we have in India, we say worker, laborers, and employees. Impact preferences and purchasing power. Then geographical distribution, the location of the population including urbanization trends and density, like rural population, urban population. Within urban we have metropolitan cities, people shifting from rural areas to metropolitan cities. So that also have an impact on the demand and the organization strategies. Then ethnicity and cultural diversity, ethnic makeup and cultural values that affect the consumer needs and preferences. So this is about the demographic environment of a business. Let us move to one more topic. Let me share another screen. I hope the screen is visible to you all. The another topic we have is that is in block 3 we have industrial policy. Now industrial policy 1991. We also call it as new economic policy of 1991. Let us see what is this new economic policy is all about. New economic policy of India was launched in the year 1991 under the leadership of P.V. Narasimha Rao. This policy opened the door of Indian economy for global exposure for the first time. So globally, the Indian government has explored its economy to the entire world. That is because of the launch of this new economic policy, which is done under the leadership of P.V. Narasimha Rao. In the new economic policy, P.V. Narasimha Rao government reduced the import duties, opened a reserved sector for the private players, and devalued the Indian currency to increase the exports. This is known as LPG model of growth. That is, L stands for liberalization, P stands for privatization, and G stands for globalization. Now, new economic policy is all about LPG model of growth, that is liberalization, privatization, and globalization model of growth. New economic policy refers to economic liberalization or relaxation in the import tariffs, deregulation of markets, or opening the markets for private and foreign players, and reduction of taxes to expand the economic wings of the country. So, in order to expand the economic operations of the country, this new economic policy came into existence by removing certain limitations on import tariffs, deregulation of the markets got deregulated, and the markets got open access to everywhere in the world. That is, even the foreign people, foreign members also can establish their organizations in our country. That is because of this new economic policy, that is LPG. Manmohan Singh is considered to be the father of new economic policy of India, and he introduced the NEP on July 24, 1991, because he was a finance minister at that point of time. The main objective behind the launching of new economic policy in 1991 by the finance minister Dr. Manmohan Singh are stated as follows. Now, the some of the objectives for launching this new economic policy is, the main objective was to plunge Indian economy into the arena of globalization and to give it a new thrust on market orientation. So one of the objective of establishing this just a minute. Sorry. Yeah, one of the objective of establishing this new economic policy is making the India globally available to entire world on market orientation. The new economic policy intended to bring down the rate of inflation. The main intention is to bring down the rate of inflation in India. It intended to move towards higher economic growth rate and to build sufficient foreign exchange reserves. It wanted to achieve economic stabilization and to convert the economy into a market economy by removing all kinds of unnecessary restrictions. As I explained, that is because of this NEP only the restrictions got the unnecessary restrictions got have been removed, so that the economic stabilization can be achieved and making the economy accessible to the entire world. That is because of the NEP. It wanted to permit international flow of goods and services, capital, human resources, and technology without many restrictions. Free flow of goods and services, technology, human resource, and capital from one country to the another country is made possible with less restrictions. That is because of this new economic policy. It wanted to increase the participation of private players in all sectors of the economy. That is why The reserved number of sectors for government were reduced. As of now, this number is just 2. Now let us see what are the main measures adopted in new economic policy. Due to various controls, the economy became defective. The entrepreneurs were unwilling to establish new industries because of MRTP Act. Corruption, undue delays, and inefficiency risen due to these controls. Rate of economic growth of the economy came down, so that in such a scenario, economic reforms were introduced to reduce the restrictions imposed on the country. Now, when we see branches of this new economic policy, we have 3 areas: liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Now, let us see what are the measures or what are the steps that are taken in each sector, each branch. Now, first we will see the liberalization measures. Now, liberalization measures undertaken in new economic policies are predetermination of interest rate by commercial banks. So, easily the liberalization interest rate of the banking system will not be determined by the RBI. Rather, all commercial banks are independent to determine the rate of the interest. So, because of this liberalization policy, new economic policy under the liberalization measures. Now, whatever the interest rates are there, that can be easily determined free without taking any grants from the RBI. Every commercial bank can decide, can determine the the interest rates by these commercial banks. That is because of this liberalization measure. Increase in the investment limit for the small scale industries. The small scale industries limit has been increased, has been raised to 1 crore rupee. That is another measure which we can see in the liberalization. Freedom to import capital goods. Indian industries will be free to buy machines and raw material from foreign countries to do their holistic development. So, to do the business developments, Indian industries previously, before this NEP, they used to pay some taxes, the import duties to buy any machine from the other countries. But now, because of this liberalization, there is a freedom to import any capital industrial good to the India. That is because of the liberalization. Then freedom from expansion and production of industries. The Indian industries or any other industry from any other country, they are free to enter into the India. They can establish their organization within India. Even the Indian organizations, Indian companies can also go to other countries to establish their organizations. So that is possible because of this liberalization measures under new economic policy. Abolition of restrictive trade practices. According to MRTP Act 1969, before this liberalization policy, organizations used to follow this particular act. Sorry. So before liberalization, organizations used to follow this MRTP Act 1969. All those companies having assets over 100 crores or more were called MRTP firms and were subjected to several restrictions. They had certain restrictions. Now, these firms have not to obtain prior approval from the government for taking investment decisions. So, this MRTP Act has been replaced by the Competition Act 2002. Now, the companies, if they want to establish their business in any other organization, in any other country, they need not have to take any prior approval from the government. They can easily establish their organization in any of the country. These are some of the measures that are undertaken in the liberalization measures. Then the after liberalization we have privatization. Now, liberalization, removal of industries licensing and registration. Previously, private sector had to obtain license from government for starting a new venture. In this policy, private sector has been freed from licensing and other restrictions. Industries licensing is necessary for the following industries. Previously, to start any company, industries used to have a license that has to be obtained from the government, but after liberalization, this licensing and registration has been reduced by in the private sector, but few industries have to get industrial license from the government. The industries are, if it is belonging to liquor industry, industrial explosives, drugs, hazardous chemicals. Then after liberalization, we have LPG. P stands for privatization. Privatization, simply seeking privatization measures, means permitting the private sector to set up industries which were previously reserved for public sector. Before privatization, so privatization means make allowing the private sector to enter into the public sector also. Previously, some of the industries are purely reserved to public sector. That means only government have a control over these industries. But after privatization, even private sector people were involved into these public sector organizations. That happened because of this privatization. Under this policy, many PSUs were unsold to were sold to the private sector. Now, many public sector organizations were sold to the private sector. So, simply privatization is a process of involving the private people into the ownership of the public sector unit. So, making the private sector organizations involving into the organization and the dealing of the public sector units. The main reason for privatization was in the currency of private public sector units are running in losses due to the political interference. Hence, the manager cannot work independently. Production capacity remained underutilized. To increase the competition and efficiency, privatization of public sector units was inevitable, that is compulsory. Then only the development will take place. Hence, the privatization taken into picture. Then let us see the steps taken for the privatization. Now, following are the steps taken for the privatization. Sale of shares for public sector units. Indian government started selling shares of public sector undertakings to the public and financial institutions. That is, public government shares of example Maruti Udyog Limited. They have sold their, that was a government company. They have sold their shares to the public. Disinvestment in public sector units. Government has started the process of disinvestment in those public sector units which has been running into losses. Minimization of public sector. The whole government holding companies have been reduced so that the private people enter into the markets and the development will take place. But few industries like railway operations and atomic energy, these are remained purely for the public sector. But even now, the railway operations are also semi public kind of a thing. Just a minute, I received a call. Sorry for the inconvenience. That was an important call. Now let us continue. So this is about the privatization measures. The next one we have is LPG. In that, G stands for globalization. Now, globalization means to make the globe or worldwide, otherwise taking into consideration the entire world. Now, previously, before this LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization, organizations were restricted to a particular geographical context, maybe related to a particular country. But because of this globalization, now the entire countries has become a single world or a single globe where everyone can move from any corner of the globe to the another corner of the globe. That means the organizations have been open to establish their institution in anywhere in the globe, anywhere in the world. Hence that happened because of this globalization. Globalization means the interaction of the domestic economy with the rest of the world with regard to foreign investment, trade, production, and financial matters. Now, the steps taken for the globalization is reduction of tariffs. Previous to the globalization, the companies, the organizations, if they want to establish or if they want to import and export the goods and services from any of the country, they used to pay some tariffs, some taxes. But because of this globalization, the customs duties and the tariffs imposed on imports and exports are reduced gradually just to make Indian economy attractive to the global investors. Then long-term trade policy. Forcing the trade policy was enforced for a longer duration. Main features of the policy are liberal policies, that is freedom related policies. All controls on foreign trade have been removed. The limitations have been removed. Open competition has been encouraged. So there is a open competition among all the companies. If your company is in India, it is open to any other company, easily compete with any other company, not only within India but outside the India also. The company can compete with any other company which are established in the particular world. Partial convertibility of Indian currency. Partial convertibility can be defined as to convert the Indian currency into the currency of other countries. Now, because we are dealing into imports and exports, trading between the countries, now because of this globalization, Indian currency can be easily converted into any other country's currency. That happened because of this globalization, so that there is a free flow of investments from foreign institutional investors or foreign direct investment. This convertibility stood valid for the transactions like remittances to meet the family expenses, the people who belonging to residents of India, but they are residing in USA or any other country. From their earnings, when they are sending their money to the family members, then in that case easily the other country's currency can be easily exchanged in Indian currency. Then payment of interest, at the time of payment of the interest also the currency can be easily exchanged. Import and exports, the main reason for the conversion of currency is because of the import and export of goods and services. Then increase in the equity limit of foreign investment. Equity limit of foreign investment has been raised from 40% to 100%. That in 47 high priority industries, foreign direct foreign direct investment to the extent of 100% will be followed without any restrictions. So easily any company can directly invest into any other company in the world without having any restrictions, because the 100% foreign direct investment is opened in India. If the Indian economy is shining at the world map currently, its sole attribution goes to the implementation of new economic policy. Now we can see that India is having a brighter position in the entire world economy, world market. That is because of this new economic policy 1991. We have discussed all these things. This is about liberalization, globalization, and privatization. Let me share another screen with another topic. The next topic we are going to discuss now is industrial sickness. Industrial sickness. Now, industrial sickness usually refers to a situation when an industrial firm performs poorly, incur losses for several years, and often defaults in its debt repayment obligations. So, industrial sickness is a situation where industries firm are running in a losses or having defaults in the debt payment obligations. Then we can see that the industry is running in a poor situation, that we call it as industrial sickness. Reserve Bank of India has defined the sick unit as which has incurred a cash loss for 1 year and is likely to continue incurring losses for the current year as well as in the following year. And the unit has an imbalance in financial structure, such as current ratio is less than 1 is to 1, and there is worsened trend in the debt equity ratio. So, Reserve Bank of India has defined the sick unit as the one which is having a loss for 1 year. Already there is a cash loss for 1 year, and in the current year also there is loss running as it is, and in the following year also, in the future year also, it is expected that the company has to face the loss. Then, along with that, if the current ratio is less than 1 is to 1, that means if the current liabilities are more than the current assets, then we can say it that the particular unit is a sick unit. Then we can say that the industrial sickness is there. Now, uh, what causes this industrial sickness, which can be studied internal as well as external. Now, let us see external reasons for industrial sickness. General recessionary trend. Sometimes a general depression hits industrial unit. So globally, there is a recession going on. Obviously, it will have an impact on the industrial unit. Hence, that is external one which cannot be controlled. That is one of the reason for the industrial sickness. High prices of inputs. When the cost of the manufacture are high and sale realization is low. The manufacturing cost is very high. The production manufacturing cost is very high, but the sales realization is very less. In that case, industrial unit cannot sustain in the market. Then the industrial units has to face certain losses. So that is one of the reason. Then non-availability of raw material. When the supply of raw material is not available, if the raw material is not available, manufacturing process cannot run, and if manufacturing of goods is not happening, then there is no question of sales, no question of profits. Hence, non-availability of raw material also leads to the industrial sickness. Changes in government policies. Industrial sickness is also caused by certain changes in policy design of the government. These frequent changes affect the long-term production, financial, and marketing planning of an existing unit. So, whenever there is a change in the government policy, it will have an impact on the industrial unit. Sometimes it also leads to the industrial sickness, maybe because of the policy regulations regarding to the imports or licensing or taxation will have an impact, negative impact on the industrial units, that leads to the industrial sickness. Then infrastructural bottlenecks. Often the infrastructure difficulty is responsible for industrial sickness. No industries can survive prolonged transport and power bottlenecks. If there is a frequent power cuts or power generation is not sufficient, and if there is a problem with regarding to transportation facilities, if there are strikes running out, if there are some industrial strikes are going on, or there is a shortage of, like currently what we are seeing in our country, that is there is a shortage of crude oil, the diesel and petrol. So that sometimes these all leads to the industrial sickness. These we call it as infrastructure bottlenecks. So these are some of the external factors which leads to the industrial sickness. Now let us see some of the internal factors. The internal factors are project appraisal deficiencies. The industrial unit becomes sick when the unit has been launched without a comprehensive appraisal of economic, financial, and technical viabilities of the project. Now, internally, there will be projects taken up by the industries, but after taking up the project, there is a lack of financial flexibility, lack of technical availability, lack of economic availability of the project, which may leads to the industrial sickness. Then lack of employee motivation, industrial unrest. When there is a labor discontent, no industrial unit can function smoothly and efficiently. Ultimately, when we say that industries or organizations will run because of the human involvement, but if the human involvement is very less or human is not comfortable with their work and employees are not comfortable with their work, then that will lead to the industrial sickness. When labor lacks motivation, no good results can be expected, as this result in sickness and non-viability of several industrial units. So, as employees lose their motivations, organizations also leads to the industrial sickness. Wrong choice of technology. If the promoters use wrong technology, results are bound to be unsatisfactory. So if technology that is introduced into the market, if the company is not viable with the technology and still the company using the same technology for their regular activities, that may result into unsatisfactory results or the unsatisfactory activities, which may lead to the industrial sickness. Like many industrial units, especially in small scale sector, do not seek professional guidance in installing the correct machinery and plant because of the shortage of the money, because of the less money. They may not go with the professional guidance. In that situation, if the machinery and the plant installed turn out to be defective and unsuitable, then they are bound to suffer losses and become sick and non-viable. Marketing problems. The industrial unit becomes sick due to product obsolescence and market saturations. So the industry units become sick when its product mix is not attuned to the consumer demand. Then wrong location. If the location of the industry unit happen to be defective either from the point of the market or from the point of view of the supply of inputs, it is bound to face the industrial sickness. So these are some of the external factors which leads to the industrial sickness. Then next we have SICA, that is Sikh Industrial Development Sikh Industrial Companies Act 1985. Now, Sikh Industrial Companies Act 1985 was key piece of legislation dealing with the issue of rampant industrial sickness in India. So this is act which is established to deal with the Sikh industrial units. The Sikh Industrial Companies Act was enacted in India to detect unviable, that is, sick or potentially sick companies to help with their revival if possible or their closure if not. So this act has been introduced to identify what are how many sick I mean to identify the sick units that are established in India, which are potentially sick companies. After identifying these companies, these particular organization, this particular institution will help them either in overcoming or coming up with their losses. Then, if possible, if the losses cannot be revived, then they will close the organization. This measure was taken to release the investment locked up in unviable companies for the productive use elsewhere. Instead of putting more funds for developing the SIC units, what they will do is these investment can be invested in some other viable companies. Sikh Industrial Companies Act 1985 SICA was the Indian law enacted to detect unviable companies that could pose systematic financial risk. SIC was repealed and replaced in 2003 by Sikh Industrial Companies Provisions Repeal Act 2003, which watered down some aspects of original act and fixed some problematic factors. SICA was a fully repealed in 2016 in part because some of its provisions overlapped with the provisions of a separate act, Companies Act 2013. Because there was a collusion between the Companies Act and the SICA Act, hence in 2016 it was fully repealed again. Sikh Industrial Companies Act identified a number of internal and external factors responsible for the epidemic. Internal factors within the organization included mismanagement, overestimation of demand, wrong location, poor project implementation, unwarranted expansion, personal extravagance, failure to modernize, and poor labor management relationships. External factors include an energy crisis, like we could see now the crude oil crisis in India, raw material shortage, infrastructure bottlenecks, inadequate credit facilities, technological changes, and global market forces. These are some of the internal and external factors which you can see for a unit or a industrial unit becoming sick. So this is about industrial sickness. I hope you all understood the today's topic that we have discussed in block 3. I hope the class is very much interesting and understandable to you all. Let us meet in the next class with the furthermore topics. Have a nice day. Thank you.